This is Made in America with Neil Asbury and Rich Rothman.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, there's a lot going on in our world today, a lot going on in our country. And, this terrible thing that happened this week in Texas, and then what happened in Buffalo, and what's happening in the American cities. What's happening in Chicago, what's happening in Los Angeles. I mean, this isn't a show where we talk about the cultural issues, and we're not going to start doing that. But it just rips your heart out. It does rip your heart out. And I just got to make mention of that. I just rips your heart out. We just got to come together as a country. We got to put this behind us. We can't politic this stuff. There's good points to be taken, on all sides of this argument. We got to come together. We got to make some decisions, and we got to go forward as a country. I don't think that's going to happen, but I sure wish it would.
Well, I feel the same way, but I'm not going to be Pollyanna about this whole thing. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the Democrats want it to happen. I think what I'm witnessing that really upsets me, and we've talked about this, is that I'm watching the American psyche being destroyed. The Judeo-Christian beliefs that our founding fathers based the rules and regulations and concepts of this great American experiment on have just been thrown out the window, and we're rewriting all the histories that made this country so great. And so when I I sit and listen to people say, well, why can't we, get this thing together and let's look the way we did after 9/11. We were very concerned that we would come together as a country, and we did. Put everything aside for a while. People actually did come together as a country.
Worked.
And yeah, it did for a while. It didn't last forever, but it did for a while. And I was out in Carmel, California for that week on holiday, and I couldn't get home. So I drove across the country. What an exciting trip that was. And so we stopped in different places, and the psyche of the country was so surreal in terms of what people didn't know how to react to that. You can read about Pearl Harbor, and you can look at that third person omniscient and say, well, it happened, and this is what happened. People got killed and everything. You don't feel it. You can understand it, but you don't feel it. But when you watch what was happening and you look at the inhumanity of what was happening, people being, destroyed in the buildings and planes and so forth, you don't know how to relate to that. And it really hit you in the head. It really hit hard. And that also almost destroyed the American psyche. And it didn't for a while. But what I watch today when I see these horrible shootings, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in a row practically, it just breaks your heart, as you're saying.
So we had to say that, and we're gonna get back to what our mission is here, which is building this entrepreneurial community, making this country safe, prosperous, through the economic activity, and bringing our jobs back and creating really good paying jobs. And one of the things that you need when you do that is you need to have a good, stable energy environment. And America's blessed with these amazing energy resources. It's just that we're just mismanaging them. And, what's going on here? And we have a great guest coming on with us, Sterling Burnett. He's from the Heartland Institute. They've been with us a lot of times. We love the folks there. They comment on many, many topics. They write on many, many topics. You got to check out the Heartland Institute. But Sterling is joining us right now. Sterling, welcome to Made in America.
Thanks for having me on. And if I may say, in follow-up to what y'all said, I'm here in Texas, and I've spent the last 2 days angst-ridden, in a deep funk, thinking about how I've seen the country changed over my lifetime. And this story, to some extent, ties into what's going on in our schools and with our youth, is because at one time, when I was growing up, my father said he wanted me to have a better life than he did. That he had reasonable expectations that if he did his job and I became a productive adult and did my job, that would come true. We are raising a generation of kids now that feel hopeless that they'll have better lives. They think the world is ending. They see the industrial base of America collapsing, and it's largely due to climate and energy policies that are destroying, and in this case, what we're going to talk about is America's electrical grid. We have an electrical grid that we built up over 100 years that was designed by engineers and functioned well. It's not that you never had blackouts or brownouts. Usually when you did, it came after a storm, a really bad storm, or as more people moved to a location and they didn't build new capacity. So during peak periods, you'd have blackouts. But now it's becoming a feature of American life, and the politicians' answer is, well, we just have to live with that. We just have to accept it, as opposed to we can get out and build new infrastructure. I mean, really build it, not take years and talking about it, but getting it done. And so it's breeding a generation of fatalists, and I think it's
Sterling,
terrible.
Let's to follow up on your point, let's listen to two clips that from this last week. One from President Biden, where he seemed to be praising the high energy costs in our country, and it was like sort of part of his grand plan. I guess it was one of those aha moments to where he actually said
the truth.
Nobody
he actually
was
said
willing
the truth.
to admit.
I don't know if you recognize he told the truth, but he actually said the truth.
And then the second clip we're going to hear is actually our good friend, been with us many times on the show, Steve Moore, and he's going to comment on that for what it really was, and then we'd like you to jump in. Let's listen.
And when it comes to the gas prices, we're going through an incredible transition that is taking place that, God willing, when it's over, we'll be stronger and the world will be stronger and less reliant on fossil fuels when this is over. You see what Europe is doing relative to the importation of Russian gas. You see what, anyway, I won't go through it all, but, and what I've been able to do to keep it from getting even worse, and it's bad. The price of gas at the pump is something that I told you, heard me say before, would be a matter of great discussion at my kitchen table when I was a kid growing up. It's affecting a lot of families.
I mean, how many times have I said on this show in the last few months that Biden is kind of lying? I mean, every statement he's made about gas prices, we're doing everything we can to lower gas prices, but that's just a lie. And this really was a kind of accidental truth-telling by Biden, where he said, well, you know what? We want to go to zero on fossil fuels, and we want to phase them out. How do you do that? You make the price so expensive people can't afford it.
Yeah, so there it is. I mean, make gas so expensive so people can't afford it. So then, the whole mobility of America and driving around this great country and doing all the things that we love to do in this country. We're a very mobile country, and our citizens, our people, families going across the country during summer. And then you talk about, what's happening in the electrical grid is, again, make it just so expensive that people don't use electric, and that the grid can't even support the people that need it, and especially our companies and our manufacturers, because you get all these brownouts. Is this part of the grand plan?
It is. No, it's certainly part of the grand plan. Biden, he's talking out of one side of his mouth, but he's not walking the walk. His actions are diametrically opposed to what he usually, like you said, he said the quiet part out loud over in Asia, that this is a great transformation that he's encouraging. Why? Because he's worried about climate change. He doesn't like fossil fuels, whatever reason. It's his actions are intentionally making a bad situation worse. And because energy is part of everything we do, food is very energy intensive. Prices of everything have gone up. You talk about inflation. Well, energy makes up more than a third of the increase in the cost of your goods and services. So if you like that and you want more of that, even higher prices, keep going down the same path you're on. That Biden is pushing, but he's doing everything he can to shut down fossil fuels. On the electric grid, like I said, we built it up over 100 years. It was designed by engineers, and now it's being designed by politicians who are not engineers, who think that if they just make something the law, you will use wind and solar power, somehow that can sustain a modern electric grid when the sun doesn't shine at night and when the wind often doesn't blow, or when they're blowing at different speeds and the sun is having clouds pass across it, or there are storms. I'm sorry, that's not how an electric grid works. It has to have a constant flow of power. And, taking an electric grid that did not depend on the whims of nature and making it depend on the whims of nature is a recipe for disaster. And the disaster is what we're seeing. California every year has to warn its residents, you will not have power. There will be times for blacks as we're putting more and more strain on the electric grid with mandates for electric vehicles and only electric appliances. So they're doubling down on misery because they make everybody use more electric, and then they're telling them, but your electric grid won't work, so you won't be able to charge that car when you need to get away from a fire or when you need just to go to work.
Hey, certainly, unfortunately, we're out of time. We really appreciate you coming on the show and also your organization, the Heartland Institute, and all the writing and the work that you do. Sterling Burnett from the Heartland Institute, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, and please have me on again anytime you need me.
Thanks. Coming up, Dr. Rich and I still got a lot more to share with you. Stay with us. Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with good friend and co-host, Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, a big discussion, in the economy right now, obviously, is inflation, is recession. Actually, the economy actually shrunk in Q1, despite, we have all of this demand for labor, which is kind of interesting. You got a lot of demand for labor right now, but how long will that last? And with inflation, even though labor has gone up, people have gotten raises. People are moving. It's a very mobile workforce that we have right now. There's better opportunities, and people are jumping ship, and we're seeing that happening all the time. But with inflation, are people getting ahead? No, they're not getting ahead. I want to play these two sound bites, and then Rich, get you in on this. It's kind of like a counterpoint with Nancy Pelosi and our good friend Larry Kudlow. Now, first of all, I got to warn you that this clip is very, very hard to listen to. Nancy Pelosi, very, very hard to listen to. We got to try to get through it. She's going to say that President Biden is not responsible for inflation. It's just a global thing, and we all just got to have to deal with it. Let's listen to Nancy.
In terms of inflation, so much is being done by this president. We have to make sure that public sentiment understands that. Inflation is a global phenomenon right now. In fact, in the UK, it's around 10%. So that doesn't make it any better for us. What are the things we are doing to reduce the global inflation and what that means to us? We are in the works now of our Competes Act to address the supply chain. Supply is down, therefore prices are up. We're in there we just passed the other day 2 bills in terms of price gouging and market manipulation, bring down the cost of price at the pump. And that has something to do with the war in Ukraine, but not everything, but a good deal of it. We're also working on reducing the cost of food for people because of the exploitation, again, of the consumer by some in the agriculture industry.
So, Rich, like I said, that was painful to listen to.
She's so sick.
But she was
so sick.
She was really, really struggling with that, and I got to tell you, really struggling. But a big part of inflation is obviously energy prices, and we know that that's self-inflicted, and food prices, which are also largely due because of the energy price. A lot of energy goes into food, and therefore food prices are going through the roof. Now, let's listen to Larry Kudlow and let him explain what's going on.
People are always asking me, are we in a recession? Or when are we going into recession? So here's my answer. If President Joe Biden ever succeeded with his woke, climate, fossil-free progressive agenda, he will put the American economy into a permanent recession.
Now, that's hard words, permanent recession.
He didn't mince his words on that at all. It's very, very clear.
Yeah, jump right in there.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
Well, let me address a couple of things that we just heard from Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi, and I'm saying that very respectfully, by the way. It's the best I can do. And that is she's with her comment saying, well, the rest of the world, Europe has a 10% inflation rate. Well, okay, except I'm in the United States. and you're responsible for the United States. The whole point was we have had such a strong economy that we were insulated from the rest of the world. Why? Because we had our own energy. And energy is the one commodity that we need to produce, to ship, to create. And these morons that we have in Washington are not connecting the dots for everything that hydrocarbons use. It's not just so you can get in your car and go somewhere, which, by the way, is the most American thing I can think of. You know, get in your car, travel Route 66. My God, they had incredible TV shows about that. They developed cars that defined who we were. But when she puts us on parity with the rest of the world, well, they're 10%, you know, we're only 8.5%. Look how good we're doing. No, we're not doing good. We're doing lousy, as a matter of fact. And then the answer is, how are we going to lower? We're doing everything we can to lower the food costs. Oh, my God, he's working everywhere, except he's blaming the exploitation of manufacturers, shippers, as well as the farmers, as well as the gristiti stores around the world and the wholesalers, because they're taking advantage of the situation, which they're not. They're trying to prevent a bad situation.
Well, their costs have gone up. I mean, if you take a look at supply chain, you look at what it costs to ship anything. Shipping, what is it? It's
Neil,
energy.
what are you
Everything's energy.
shipping?
It all goes back from energy.
You ship all over the world.
Yeah.
Percent-wise, how much are you up over the last 2 years?
Oh, my goodness.
It's got to be killing you.
Well, what would typically cost in the $4,000 range to ship a container is now in the $12,000 range, and it has been as high as $20,000, and it's kind of floating in that $12,000. But that's up 300% over 2 years. I mean, anything that goes up 300% is, and the input of transportation into everything that we do is massive. And then what's the big input to transportation? It's energy. So if you start messing with that, you're going to see inflation just go out of control, and that's where we are right now. And you're going to see everything that we buy being impacted by that, including food. I mean, look at the farmers. I mean, what is one of the biggest expense that they have? Fertilizer, in energy to
diesel.
Diesel, which is way up. I mean, diesel is at least $1, if not more, a gallon more than gasoline right now.
Diesel is slightly under $6 a gallon. It was $3 and change just a few years ago. The farmers are paying 2 to 3 times what they did for their fuel. The farmers are paying 2 to 3 times for their fertilizer. And the food hasn't even gone to market yet. It's first going to go to market as the weather warms up and the harvest comes in. We have no idea how it's going to affect it. It's not going to be good.
So we're going to follow right up on that, Rich, your point with Tristan Justice from the Federalist. And he's written a piece. Yeah, a great organization. And we're going to talk about what gas prices could be by the end of the summer. It's going to shock you. Stay with us.
Promoting American industry. This is Made in America with Neil Asbury and Rich Rothman.
Very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with my great friend and co-host, Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we're going to hear just in a moment, not right this second, but we're going to hear just in a moment about what Americans across the country are saying about the energy prices. But before we do, I'm going to introduce our next guest, Tristan Justice, who's a writer for the Federalist. Tristan, welcome to Made in America.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, I just got to confess that both Dr. Rich and I have a crush on Molly, right? Just to get that out there. She's just absolutely great. We love her commentary, and she's out there fighting the good fight. So just wanted to share that with you. We just decided we would confess right here on the air. But I'm sure you hear that a lot, right? I'm sure doing these shows, there's probably a lot of Neils and Dr. Riches out there. But we're going to listen to Americans sounding off this last week on what they think. Americans from all over the country, what they think about President Biden's high energy prices. Let's listen to this.
They're way too high, extremely out of control, ridiculous. Should not be allowed whatsoever. It's been steadily getting higher and higher every month of this new administration.
It almost doubled since Joe Biden got in office. It's been horrible.
I mean, yeah, they're too high, but what are you going to do?
The gas is absurd, and this is terrible. I had to park my car around here walking around because I can't afford the gas. I make $19.50 an hour. That's it.
You gotta get to where you gotta go. You wanna enjoy life, you gotta pay.
Some customers, you pump their gas, they don't want to pay for it too. They say it's too much money.
It's not really hurting me because, I'm a driver. I'm charging the client, so it's hurting my clients. Really, it's not hurting me, though.
People aren't doing as many things. They're not traveling. They're not vacationing. I mean, it's taking a lot of money out of people's pockets. I see it. I'm in the real estate business. It's less money that they can use on, spending money on their kids, their houses, the food. They're not going out as much. It's really, especially in California, it's killing us. It's over $7 in some places.
So, Tristan, I mean, the guy who was
not
saying,
a good day.
Hey, look, I'm getting charged, but I'm just passing it on to my customers.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. Put my customers out of business, but hey, it's not bothering me.
But
I'm just passing it along.
But Tristan, jump right in here. I mean, this is really crazy. I mean, this is going to impact, I think, a lot of people over the summer. I mean, it's going to change the way that we spend our summers. Energy costs, going out in a boat, traveling across the country, doing the road trip across Route 66, whatever that is, this is going to impact Americans in a fundamental way.
Well, you're absolutely right. And it's not only going to hurt Americans when they actually go to fill up their gas tank, but it's actually going to hurt Americans across the entire economy. It's going to raise the cost of goods when they go to the store. It's going to raise the cost of groceries when they go to the store, because it raises the cost of transporting those goods. It raises the cost of producing those goods, growing those goods. So according to the latest data from the U.S. Department of Labor, inflation is up 8.3%, which is a 4-decade high, but energy prices in particular are up 30% across the board, and that's a year over a number. Energy prices were already on the climb last year, and so I think you could almost put an asterisk on all of these year-over-year estimates and really look back 2 years, 3 years, and you'll see just how steep prices have gone. The national average of a regular unleaded gasoline hit a new record today, and I think we're on day 16 of consecutive records every single day as the price continues to go up into Memorial Day. The nationwide average for a regular unleaded gasoline is $4.60 per gallon. Diesel remains at $5.53 per gallon. That's only 3 cents less than the record that it hit last week. And so what's going to happen with these energy prices is that they ripple across the entire economy, and it ultimately gets passed on to the consumer in every avenue. And so Americans aren't just getting hit with these high gas prices when they actually go fill up the car. They're paying more for everything. And so it just builds on inflation, and it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. As some analysts from JP Morgan came out several days ago and said the national average for gasoline, everyone sees sticker shock in California. They're already at $6 a gallon. That number is going to be nationwide by August, according to analysts at JP Morgan Chase. They're expecting $6.20 per gallon. And so I can only imagine what gas is going to look like in California 3 months from now.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think people, they're looking at it now and they're saying, well, what am I going to do? And it's really bad. And I don't think they understand where in the next 60 to 90 days the prices are really going to be going. We've been interviewing farmers, people who own 16,000 acre, private family owned farms. We've been talking to people and listening to people in the trucking business. We've listened to Mike Rowe talk about, what diesel's doing to some of the truckers, how a lot of the smaller trucking companies, the individual truckers, independents, I should say, are struggling and may not make it through this year because of this. They cannot maintain their products. Some people are spending $4,800 a week on diesel, where before it was $1,200, $1,500. So, you're right. That is the most common agnostic tax that you can hit everybody with. So when the food comes in, and you're right, and the farmers are paying more for their diesel to use their Caterpillars and their John Deeres. They're paying more to have the 18-wheelers come and bring the corn to the market. They're paying more money for the fertilizer if they can get it. They're paying more money for the fertilizer. That's going to affect the crop. They're not going to have as many big the depth of crop that they had in previous years. They're going to have smaller crops, less quality. Price is going to go up because of that alone. And then along the way, the Biden administration, in its brilliance, of these. You know what I find them amazing? Pete Buttigieg is a Rhodes Scholar, and he really knows nothing about life. But other than that, all of this is going to come and going to hit, and you're right, that is going to create more inflation. It is not going to go away because this hasn't even hit yet. That's my concern.
Well, you're absolutely right. And this is a direct consequence of an administration that has completely abandoned an energy dominance policy from day one of coming into office. I mean, we saw that suspension of oil and gas leases on federal land. You can see the spike in the numbers right away from inauguration day. That was huge across the industry. It froze investment in a capital and labor-intensive industry, shying off Wall Street investors. It killed incentive for producers to ramp up production if they were just going to face federal interruption. And then this cancellation of the Keystone Pipeline sent those same signals of animosity to the industry that's just chilled production. So production has been suppressed ever since Biden took office, and there's no signs of any type of reversal of this animosity towards fossil fuels. In fact, this administration is doubling down on these anti-American energy policies. Just earlier this month, CBS News revealed that a series of new oil and gas projects were actually canceled again in Alaska and the Gulf of Mexico. That's coming as gas prices continue to rise at record rates. And so this administration is doing everything in its power to avoid unleashing American energy production and hurting American consumers. And all Biden wants to say about it is blame Putin, 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 when in reality, inflation and gas prices have come way before this war in Ukraine started. It happened the day Joe Biden took office.
Precisely.
And, you know, the other thing is, you know, we talk about the farmers and the fertilizer and the fuel costs. America has always been the breadbasket of the world, you know, and now you're talking about food shortages around the world. We can't even produce the food.
No, it's worse. We're celebrating. This administration is celebrating UK deliveries and FedEx. Thank God for FedEx. They're bringing in supplies for babies from the UK, and they're celebrating their brilliance of actually bringing it in. Of course, you know, half a year too late. But I just find that astounding. They're so out of touch with the reality. It's scary.
Hey, Tristan, thanks for being on the show. Tristan Justice from the Federalist. We really appreciate the work you do.
Well, thank you for having me.
Coming up, Dr. Rich and I still have a lot more to talk about. Stay with us. Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we just talked about the baby formula crisis and about food shortages, and you know this is really a big issue. Now we're seeing what happened with baby formula, but we're talking about America's food supply is also at risk, and even though we can get through it because we are this blessed country, the breadbasket of the world, there's many places in the world that will not be able to get through it.
Yeah.
And our ability to export won't be there like it has been historically. And we could fill any void, but that was a while ago before the Biden economy and the regulation and the energy costs and just everything that's happening right now around us. We'll just be struggling to take care of ourselves. But this baby formula thing, we just talked about it. Let's listen to Stuart Varney from Fox Business. He kind of said it's a little bit long, but he really
worth the listen.
He really sums up what happened with this incompetence at the baby formula shortage that we have right now.
The baby formula shortage is a story of gross government incompetence. It goes all the way to the top. On October 21st, 2021, all those months ago, a whistleblower drew attention to problems at a baby formula plant. You realize it was 2 months before the Food and Drug Administration even interviewed the whistleblower. It took them another month to inspect the plant and another 2 weeks to shut it down and recall the product. That's more than 3 months between the alarm bell ringing and action. You would have thought that at that point, with the alarm bells ringing and shortages developing, the government would have a plan to fill the emptying shelves. They did not. High tariffs and regulations stopped imports from Europe. All right, you would have thought that at this point, the HHS Secretary, Javier Becerra, who is in charge of the FDA, you would have thought he would jump on this, changing the regulations and urging lower tariffs. For months, though, he did nothing. And you never see this guy. And you have to wonder why a man with zero experience in healthcare runs the country's biggest health bureaucracy. Question: when did President Biden know about the growing shortage? Surely his aides told him. Is he ill-informed or dragging his feet again? Well, finally, last week, a shipment of formula from Europe arrived, and the White House, spinning like crazy, took a victory lap. That spin won't work. The shelves are still emptying. Gross incompetence. And the world is laughing at us.
Well, there you go. I mean, he did a very good job of summing it up. And, gross incompetence. We're talking about regulation. We're talking about supply chain. We're talking about tariffs. These things that hurt American entrepreneurs and small businesses, the backbone of our economy, the people that's out there building our prosperity, building our security, building our stability, are getting ravished by this sort of incompetence.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it really shows is exactly that. It's incompetence and a lack of leadership. And this is what happens. These are the unintended consequences of electing people who know nothing. If you stay in the insular place called the Senate or the Congress, and you're there for 40, 50 years, as Joe Biden had been, and you never really ran anything, you didn't do anything, you don't know how to create anything. The uniqueness about, Mr. Trump as the president was that he actually ran something, produced something, had employees, knew how to get things done. And if he had to get something done, i.e. the vaccine and other things, and the PPE and the inhalators and all this other stuff, he put the right people together who understood manufacturing and understood shipping and understood how to overcome inertia. And don't take no for an answer. I mean, there are people like, when you think about it, in history, look at Patton. Patton never took no for an answer. MacArthur never took no for an answer. That's why we won wars in Europe. That's why we won wars in the Philippines and the Pacific over in Japan. Because failing was not an option. You couldn't do that. NASA is a great example of that in the day. But today, these people haven't got a clue what they're doing and make it happen. But more importantly, the question is, what do they really want to do? Do they want to have us on a parity, as we talked earlier, with European countries, or are we going to be the wonderful city on the hill and be exceptional? I thought, and I vote for, and I think our listeners do, we are exceptional. We're Americans.
With an incompetent government.
It's just scary.
Hey, Rich, we're going to take a break. We're going to be right back. This is Neil and Rich. Stay with us. Welcome to Made in America. We're back. This is Neil, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, a great American passed this past week, and you've seen him in the movies and the gangster movies, and he always did such a great job, and I really enjoyed watching him. I mean, he just had the part down. Ray Liotta, just absolutely phenomenal, and. In recognition of his career and his life. I mean, and by the way, he passed away at 67.
67 years of age.
I mean, yeah, very, very, very young. I'm so sorry to hear that. I mean, he still had a lot left in him.
Oh, I loved watching Ray Liotta. I just thought he was terrific, and particularly for the role that he played. And not only that, he could take roles, gangster roles or tough guy roles, and he did it with a sense of humor. That was just magnificent.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
So, as far back as he can remember, he wanted to be a gangster.
Wow. And that's Henry Hill, who's a real character from the Queens. And he was, when he was a kid practically in high school, he started parking cars for the mob in the Queens. and he always wanted to be a gangster, and they made him a gangster. Of course, he turned on them, but he made them a gangster.
And you are our movie historian. So thanks for pointing that out. And then let's listen to this next clip and tell us what's going on here.
That's what the FBI could never understand. That what Paulie and the organization does is offer protection for people who can't go to the cops. That's it. That's all it is. They're like the police department for wise guys.
I think that really sums it up great, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, they're talking about, how they handle people in Queens and throughout that area and going out to, JFK and LaGuardia because they stole constantly from the airport. And their job was to take money from everybody from the street, to loan money, to do loan sharking, to do prostitution. And they viewed themselves and to kind of humanize the whole thing. Well, we're basically a police department for wise guys. You can't go to the cops, which if you think about it, that's what the mafia did originally. They became the police with the Italians who were being subjected to racism by the Irish cops in New York City. That's how that came about in the early 1900s. And so the mob came and developed itself. So they're defining it. There's a great scene where and we can't play the whole scene because it's got too much profanity, but where they're explaining that, listen, we loan you money, you got to pay us. Your building burned down, bam, you got to pay us. Your family died, you got to pay us. If anything bad happened that would prevent you from having money, it doesn't make any difference. You got to pay it, or they'll kill you. So it's a very interesting. People are fascinated with the power of the mafia. Why is it then with The Godfather, they're bad people? The Godfather are bad people, but somehow, we were able to make that connection on the human side of The Godfather, the family side of The Godfather, so to speak. And everyone wanted them to win and the cops to lose. If you think about that, you're sitting watching The Godfather, you want Michael Corleone to get away with shooting a cop. Now, granted, he's a very bad cop, but he commits murder. He kills a bad guy in the mob. He kills a cop at the same time. He never gets to finish his really good veal in this place in an Italian restaurant. And you're cheering for the bad guy. It's an amazing thing.
What was your favorite movie?
With him?
Yes.
Probably Goodfellas. Goodfellas to me defined an awful lot. When I grew up in New York City, in my high school, the mob ran numbers in my school. They ran all sorts of things that I don't want to talk about.
With the kids? The kids were like...
Yes, they were. Yes, yeah.
You're kidding
I had
me.
a guy named Tony who was a real
Tony,
tough
of course.
guy. How perfect is that? Our cliche.
From Jersey?
No.
Tony from Jersey?
No, from Grand Street. Around the corner from Ferraris, which is a place that we used to cut school and go get, pastries. And they were the toughest guys you could ever imagine. So if the bad guys came after me, and they were my friends, I got to be friendly with them to protect myself. And if anyone came after me, I'm a little Jewish guy in this really tough school, and it was Seward Park High School. Anybody out there would know it. Very tough school, looked like a prison. Kind of was a prison. And if anyone messed with me, I would say, hey, listen, I just got to tell you.
Got to go see Tony.
I don't know any worse. I got to tell you, I'm really good friends with Paul Zangara. That's a real name, by the way. Paul Zangara. Nobody in their right mind would mess with Paul Zangara. He would wrestle a school bus to the ground. I mean, Paul Zangara was nuts. He was nuts. Nobody messed. And that's what was happening in my high school. So when I watched the Goodfellas and you understand the power they had and the lifestyle they lived, it's just fascinating to me.
Well, Rich, thanks for sharing that. That was an incredible story. But unfortunately, we're out of time. We're going to be back again next week with another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.